Hello, this is Paul Chek. Welcome back to yet another one of my video blogs. Today I will begin a 7-part series. I know that sounds like a long journey, but it's not really. I designed it so that each segment would be a little shorter because this is actually not just a video to watch as edutainment. This is an opportunity to do some real process work, some real healing. You can do it for free with me right here. If you like this process, then guess what? Holistic Lifestyle Coach Level 2, my professional level course for teaching you how to be a professional holistic lifestyle coach, has a lot more in it. HLC 3 is another big jump up, but to get into it, you got to do HLC 1, Holistic Lifestyle Coach Level 1, which you can do online anytime, 24/7, from anywhere in the world if you have an internet connection. And it's loaded with stuff that's very, very helpful at all levels of your being. And I'm going to do a 7-part series so that each part, which will be based on the psychological theme of each of the 7 chakras in the 7 chakra system, which are psychophysical realities. Psyche meaning soul, physical meaning body. That way we can look at the 7 main themes that our psyche operates in relationship to self or other or person, place, or thing. Now, I go much deeper in this type of work in my Chek 4-quadrant coaching mastery program. The first segment of that program is available online, and there are several more. It's 4 segments in total, so very comprehensive for those that are therapists and doctors and psychologists and people like that want to get a unique holistic perspective on deep inner work. But today I'm going to start off with part 1 by overviewing the model. Once we have the model understood, we will progress by applying it to each of the chakras. Today we'll do the model and chakra 1. And my suggestion is that you have something to write on as we're going through this. And that way you can then use the time between blog releases, which is once a week, usually every Monday, depending on the flow of my schedule. And you can actually engage yourself honestly and openly so that you can transform bondage and pain into freedom. And that's what life's all about. That's what we're all here to do. It's kind of a miraculous reality, but I could get into the whys of it and the hows of it, and it would be another long discussion. I get into all of that in my Chek practitioner and Chek HLC training programs and Chek 4-quadrant coaching mastery and HLC 2 and HLC 3 very deeply. So we're going to start with something practical that anybody can use. Pretty much anybody from about 12 years of age onward could take advantage of these lessons, although for a 12-year-old it might be a bit tricky for reasons that'll be obvious when we get into it. But the people that this is going to be most applicable to are the people that are suffering from some kind of pain or feel like they're trapped or in some kind of bondage, be it in relationship with themselves, relationship with others, family members, coworkers, bosses, things such as addictions to drugs, sex, money, power, fame, attention, you name it. So by doing your own process work between releases of the successive blogs in the series, you'll begin to grow and be aware of how you can help yourself. And to start with, I will recommend a book that I recommend as prerequisite reading to my Chek Holistic Lifestyle Coach practitioners when they're in training at level 2 and above, and it's called The Book of Chakra Healing by Liz Simpson. It's a beautiful book. I probably have about 100 of these types of books, at least in my library. But when it comes down to a book that I think is very beautifully written, very authentic, and easy to read, and beautiful color graphics and pictures in it, it's really nicely done. It's just a gorgeous book. There's a chart of correlations, for example. So I recommend that. Now, as I like to always do, for obvious reasons, my 2 books you can get that will help you along the way if you don't already have them is The Last 4 Doctors You'll Ever Need, How to Get Healthy Now. That's currently available as a multimedia ebook. We only printed a very small number of these in hard copy, so they're not available at this time, but the multimedia ebook has slides, audio, video, and the text. So it gives you a lot of ways to learn. And then we have my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, the 2nd edition. And if you're on Amazon, just look for 2nd edition. Has the 4 doctor principles and key elements synthesized right in the beginning of the book to support you in applying the model that I share in this book, which covers the key things that we all need to know to be healthy: how to move effectively, eat effectively, breathe effectively, work out, work in. Lots of stuff in there. People, even very skilled people, have told me they've read it 7 times and are still learning from it. And I read it and go, wow, that's cool. I can't remember putting that in there. So it must be pretty good. We've sold about 180,000 copies, which isn't bad for a self-published book. With that said, let's orient you to the model that I have for you here for this series. So remember the alchemical dictum, as above, so below. What that means is we create first in our minds, through our thoughts, our beliefs, and our emotions. Whatever we can believe of and conceive of, we can manifest if we have enough intention, enough awareness, enough energy, and we apply ourselves. I mean, all you got to do is look at what's going on in the world right now, and a lot of the things that are happening, from space programs to quantum physicists now doing atom teletransportation, lots of the things that we're experiencing right now, not too long ago, were considered science fiction. Won't be long before we have flying cars. We're already seeing the emergence of robotics and even robotic bodies and all sorts of wild stuff. So if you can conceive of it and believe of it and focus on it, it is something that you do have the ability to create. And creating what we want, or what I call your dream, is really what makes life meaningful to us. And it gives us the ability to become a conscious co-creator with the world or the universe. So as above, so below. Now, by the same token, if your body's out of balance below and you're not taking care of yourself, it will distort your mind above. So if you've got chronic dietary problems, or you chronically over or under exercise, or you chronically don't get enough sleep, or you walk around with your poor me story, well, then the below of you will stop you from accessing your full potential above, because you're using that energy to embody what you don't want. And so there's a certain period where our challenges with our body and our mind and our emotions are actually very beneficial, because those challenges give us the resistance we need to grow ourselves, just like we need resistance in a gym to grow our muscles or our strength. We also need resistance emotionally, and we need resistance mentally. And all those are spiritual forms of development. So here you see that I have a sine wave. The line here in the middle, this would be very similar to an electrocardiogram or electroencephalogram. The point in the middle is a 0 point. That's pure potential. The half of the sine wave underneath the line represents the negative elements that we're dealing with, so painful things, losses, challenges that are, still holding us bondage in some way. we'll refer to those as negatives. The positives are the things that we are happy about, that we want to maintain or continue. And remember, as above, so below, whatever you have up here, there has to be its potential down below. So anything that you have as a challenge down here automatically carries the potential to be something positive if it's transformed effectively or nurtured effectively. So think of this as seeds, and think of that as what we grow by watering the seed and nourishing it with conscious intention and participation. And we have the unconscious elements of ourselves, which is the shadow elements. There's much more to the unconscious than I can even begin to discuss here. And that's what Chek 4-quadrant coaching does. I go through an entire model of the psyche based on Jung's model and other people. So the negative relates to the unconscious and the shadow. In the positive, then, we have a combination of events happening. Over here in the negative, we usually hear ourselves using the words, I have to. Why aren't you getting enough sleep? I have to stay up late and study. Why are you always broke? I have to keep doing this job because nobody else will hire me. Or why are you still in this relationship when you complain about it? Oh, I have to because I have financial ties with this person, or I have children with this person, which may or may not be a legitimate excuse. We could go for hours on that one. Now, up here, you see the crystal ball. So what I'm going to do is explain that for you. One of the exercises I use with my actual patients and clients that I coach, which I still am in active practice, have been for 35 years, when we get to one of these potential blockages, especially if you're using the word I have to, the words I have to, then I have people do what I call the crystal ball exercise. So you hold up your imaginary crystal ball and you look into it, and this is an imagination exercise, and you say, what will my life be like in 3 months if nothing changes, or if I don't choose to change? And you write that down. What will my life be like in 6 months? Write that down. What will my life be like in a year? Write it down. 3 years, 5 years. Many times my patients have said, even at 6 months, I will probably die or commit suicide. Well, there you go. Now that you're clear, it's time to get busy. Because committing suicide doesn't fix anything, actually. It's kind of like pulling the plug in the middle of a movie. You walk around for the rest of your life wondering what the ending was. And I could go for a long discussion on that. But I will be doing a podcast, probably a series on death, in my Living 4D with Paul Chek podcast. If you haven't been there yet, check it out. Loads of great podcasts. You might want to listen to James Hollis because it relates directly to some of the concepts we're talking about here, as well as James Wanless. So the crystal ball is what we use to gain clarity when we're dealing with unresolved pain and challenges. And that gives us an opportunity. And you may actually also find you can use the crystal ball technique for the positive. So what if I stay in this job that I like, but I'm not making that much money, or as much as I'd like to make? What does that look like in 3 years or 3 months? Well, I might get a promotion. A year, I may be able to bring new ideas to the business, or even create a new job position for myself. So you can use the crystal ball in any direction, really. Okay? So we want to be conscious that whenever we're saying I have to, which is the words of a child psychologically, we can step up our game to being an adult and replace those words with I choose to. So, for example, Marshall Rosenberg gives an example of someone in session with him saying, well, I have to spank my child. And he says, no, you don't have to spank your child. Nobody has to spank their child. you choose to. Now, how you justify that is up to you. But the point being is, we don't have to do anything. We don't even have to breathe. People commit suicide all the time, which stops the breathing. So it's a real big game changer when you really just switch from I have to thinking to self-empowered I choose to thinking and become an adult. And if those of you watching are children, well, depending on what the issue is, it may not be time for you to become an adult yet. For example, I have to walk to school doesn't have to be I have to walk to school. It could be I can get a ride from a friend, or I can catch a bus. But if you say I choose to drive mom and dad's car to school and you're 12, that might be troublesome. Although it has been done. I recently saw a film clip of a report of a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old who took their parents' car with his little sister to McDonald's, and people at the drive-through window immediately recognized this kid's too young to drive a car, so they called the cops. It was kind of funny. Sort of funny. Okay? Now, whenever we're dealing with transformation of a challenge to a positive, we always need to get clear on what our wants, feelings, and needs are. A very good book I highly recommend with regard to nonviolent communication, which is where this comes from, is a little book called Nonviolent Communication, The Basics as I Know and Use Them, by Wayland Myers, PhD. It'll fit right in your pocket. It's a badass little book, and it can really help you in relationships. It's a beautiful gem of a book. Nonviolent Communication, The Basics as I Know and Use Them, by Wayland Myers. It's been sitting on my desk for many years. I refer to it because that way of communicating nonviolently is so counterculture to us that it takes a lot of practice and a lot of self-awareness to get there. Okay, so when we look at our potential here, when we're dealing, and I'll get through the rest of this, when we're dealing with our challenges, as I said, they hold the seeds of our potential. Joseph Campbell, Robert A. Johnson, and many other experts on the shadow remind us that in our unconscious or our shadow, most people are focusing on the darkness of the shadow, but they forget that there is also our genius down there. Any of these things that are challenges have the ability to produce consciousness. So what is consciousness? I'm going to quote Edward Edinger, psychiatrist, Jungian analyst, who wrote several amazing books, including The Anatomy of the Psyche. Now, just for you, guys, this is not light reading, just in case you want to run out and buy the book, go ahead, but know that it's not light reading. Edward Edinger is a deep guy like Jung. But in paraphrase, Edward Edinger defines consciousness this way. Consciousness is a psychic substance produced not blindly, but in living awareness of opposites. So here you have your complementary opposites, which the same symbol as this is the Tai Chi symbol, just drawn differently. So bring that into your mind. Consciousness is a psychic substance. It's real. When we have knowledge of something, it's real. Applied knowledge is power. When you have a lot of knowledge, you can usually make a lot of money with it if you're intelligent about using your knowledge. So when we have consciousness, Itzhak Bentov describes consciousness as the total information carrying capacity of any system. So the more information we have within the system, the more options we have. If we have no information, then we have no potential for change because there's nothing to guide and direct the flow of our consciousness and our energy. Okay? So consciousness is a psychic substance produced not blindly, meaning you have to pay attention, but in living awareness of opposites. So we always have to be aware of what our dream is, because if we don't have awareness of what our dream goal or objective is, how do we know whether any person, place, thing, or choice is dream affirmative or serves us or doesn't? So largely what you'll see is most people are just walking around complaining, not realizing they're just acting out parental and social programming, and they're making decisions like a program robot, but complaining about how shitty their life is or how they don't have enough money or, Tweedledee and Tweedledum goes on all day. But it gets old, and, after a while, the old story of the boy that cried wolf, people just get tired of hearing you, so the next thing you know, you find people aren't returning your calls, don't want to hang out with you because those type of people are energy drainers or energy vampires, and they're not inspiring to us. So this is an opportunity to jump out of that kind of camp if you're caught in that loop. Now, in order for us to extract our potential, we need to have a dream, which can be a goal or an objective. It can also be conscious awareness of what your legacy is, which is your life purpose. That takes a while. If you look at my Evolve Your Career podcast, I take you quite deeply into the process of identifying what your dream or your legacy is. And that's also in PPS Success Mastery Lesson 1 at ppssuccess.com. Once we know what our dream, goal, or objective is as it relates to whatever it is we're talking about, as we go through the chakra system and we look at the psychological themes, then we can ask ourselves, what is our dream as it relates to that particular theme, which is why I'm breaking it up this way. Once you have awareness, then you can move to step 2, which is, where do I need to balance? Where do I have too little of, too much of, which is what we do over here. Too little of, too much of, and then each of the themes, I'm giving you this. Zen means the most efficient way, or the middle path. The Tao means the middle way. Zen, the most efficient way. Not too much, not too little. You'll find things are a little nicer in life and easier on the environment in many regards. So what we're doing is I choose to live this way. So we'll identify where we're lacking or where we're in excess, and then we'll write down what does it look like if I find the middle as it relates to my dream. So your dream, I dream, or I choose, and that's what you put down there. And this is one of the exercises I teach my students in HLC2 training. Okay? Now, before we jump into the issues of the root chakra, let me highlight some very potent realities and statements by some very powerful people. First of all, Jung said, Carl Jung, who is the founder of depth psychology, is the creator of art therapy as we know it today, and made many, many advances in many areas. If you're not familiar with Jung, he's very deep, so you might want to find a basic book on Carl Jung to start with. Jung said whenever people came to him with a challenge, especially if it's been around in their life for a while, his first question is, what is your unmet task? What is your unmet task? What are you avoiding? What are you denying? What are you blaming others for that ultimately is not going to change until you accomplish the task of making the change needed to find balance, harmony, heal, and grow? So as we approach each of the themes of the chakras, look at it and say, what is my unmet task regarding to whatever it is that I'm unconscious of and probably blaming for others for? That's a projection. And that's when we bring shadow content that is subjective into awareness, so we now can say, I have the potential to turn this negative content into a positive potential or experience, okay? And then the unmet task is met, and healing emerges, and you free the energy that's trapped up and all the woulda, shoulda, coulda, done, didn't, poor me circuitry. Jung also said something quite profound. He said it is the task every child is tasked with the unfinished business of their parents' lives. Every child is tasked with the unfinished business of their parents' lives. What does that mean? It means if your father was an alcoholic or your mother was an alcoholic, that you are tasked with the need to create freedom from alcohol in your life. If your parents were always broke, my parents fought about money a lot. Therefore, it became my task to evolve the gene line by becoming financially free or capable, or to the point where I didn't have to relive Groundhog Day in the house that I was raised in. So if your parents, for example, have heavy racial bias or sexual bias, the children are tasked with the process of evolving to a higher level of consciousness. Because our parents are our programmers, our initial way of looking at the world is just a mirror of how they treated us and what they programmed us with. So this all becomes meaningful when you realize that we have to have something to work with to develop our sense of self, our psychic strength, the ability to use our minds to create what we want, and that we can't be on the hind tit forever, or evolution will not progress. And the system is designed for evolution, whether you participate or not. You know, life is often referred to as a river, and if you don't move with it, then you hit resistance, and it's a massive river. If you go against it, you're swimming upstream, and you're probably going to get tired pretty quick. And so it's not hard to find people that are doing that. Ken Wilber talks about the story gap, and I've modified his statement a little bit, but basically Ken Wilber says, the greater the gap between the story you're telling yourself and the story you're telling others, the more likely you are to become fatigued. If you keep doing it, you'll get sick. If you keep doing it, you'll get an illness. And if you keep doing it, you're going to die sooner than you probably would have died if you healed. Okay? So part of the process as we go through the 7 chakras is to say, what is the story that I'm telling myself, and how does that differ from the story I'm telling others? For example, if you masquerade as somebody with a lot more knowledge than you really have, well, when someone puts you on stage, the story gap's going to bite. If you masquerade as having a lot more money than you do, well, it won't take people long to figure out that it's all just superficial stuff. And you know, you don't have to go far in California. Go to any apartment building where most of the people in there can't afford a house, and you'll see them driving $55,000 BMWs and cars like that, because they're pretending to be somebody that they're not really yet. Okay? Now this is a deep one. Rudolf Steiner, who is a genius at many, many levels, right there with Jung and many others like that, said whenever someone came to him with a disease, now he was teaching doctors and therapists how to handle cases like this, he said, if you can help the patient find their their secret story, the story they keep telling themselves about why this happened to them, or why somebody else shouldn't have done what they did, or why it's mommy and daddy's fault, or whatever, if you can identify the secret story and help the patient bring that up into consciousness and work on rewriting the story so it is life affirmative and dream affirmative, then typically people will heal. And this is one of the reasons we see all these spontaneous healings from even end-stage cancers where doctors say, you got 2 weeks to live. And there's many, many books on that. A great one is Mind to Matter by Dawson Church, for example. Okay? So now that we've got the backdrop, we're going to know what our dream is for each thing, or at least we need to focus on that. We're going to look at ways to balance ourselves. Then we have to make choices. The optimal choice is the one that gets you there most efficiently and is something that is affirmative for your dream team. Everybody feels supported by that choice. The suboptimal gives instant gratification but usually causes problems on the dream team. The worst choice in this regard is to do nothing or to be apathetic and not care. Sometimes you have to call a timeout because you're losing connection with somebody. The emotions are getting too hot, so you've got to go gather yourself so that you can come back and stay connected at the heart. And sometimes we have to call a timeout because we need more information to make an intelligent decision. So your three choices are the optimal, the suboptimal, and do nothing. And the three derivations of doing nothing are: I need more information, I'm losing connection, the energy is getting too chaotic, we're separating from each other and potentially going to damage the relationship, or I'm being apathetic, which means I don't care, which means your crystal ball turns black, basically, and it's not a healthy place to be, and it's usually a deep poor me situation. Okay? Then we have the four doctors, and those are categories of action. So Dr. Happiness represents the mind and your values. Dr. Movement, how do I choose to move my body and manage my emotions and my thoughts, because emotion means energy in motion, so it's moving. Thoughts are dynamic, they move, and we use our mind, it moves. Dr. Diet, what will I feed myself to keep my body healthy? Feed myself emotionally, so my emotional body's health, and what will I use to nourish my mind so that my mind is healthy? And Dr. Quiet, how will I rest my body? How can I rest my emotions? And how can I practice resting my mind? And Dr. Quiet relates to working in, doing inner work with movement, and Dr. Quiet also relates to meditation, which is a component of Dr. Happiness. So I've gone through a lot of these things. There's a series I did called The Fastest Way to Health. There's another series I did called The 7 A's of Healing, all which have complementary information that I won't be able to share here to keep this manageable. So there you have the model. What am I conscious of that I was unconscious of? The subjective becomes objective, so you can work with it. We've been through that. Now, let's talk about the root chakra. Chakras are vortexes of energy that basically step down from the highest vibrational energies into the physical vibration, manifest as tissues. One way to think of your body, which is made of matter, is that matter is spirit moving slowly enough that you can interact with it. If you believe in God, then God would represent the absolute, which is infinitely fast, so all potentials are manifest simultaneously at that level. So there's everything and no thing, so you can't be conscious of everything and no thing at once. So the universe dreams you into existence, and basically we are that. So paradoxically, we dream each other into existence to have this experience, without which love could not exist. So it's all really a love game. So the root chakra, which is the energy comes out between your legs, between your vagina or testicles and your rectum. That's where the vortex of energy is. It links you to the earth. It's related to your L5 vertebra and sacrum, and to the bones of your legs and the bones of your body in general. So problems in those areas often indicate energy that's blocked in the root chakra, which is disrupting physiological systems. The psychological themes are safety and security, tribal association, and wanting to belong. What is it that I need to feel safe and secure? Now, most people are going to think, oh, if so-and-so would only do this for me, I'd be safe and secure. But the reality of it is that's the position of a child. with this process, we want to get clear, what are we willing to do for ourselves to create safety and security? What are you willing to choose to do? Okay? Safety and security can mean a lot of things. And basically what you will find, and when I teach HLC 3 at the Chek Institute, I show that the standard model of the chakra is much more basic than it really works. So when we talk about safety and security, a simple way to say where do I need to be safe and secure is to look at the other levels of the chakra system. At this level, safety and security means, what do I need to feel safe with my tribe, which today would be your family, which is often the source of a lot of pain for people. Great Spirit built dysfunction right into the family to make sure we have an opportunity to grow. Otherwise, we would just stay like someone staring at a television eating potato chips for the rest of their life, which would be unconscious. Tribal association means, who are my people? For example, if you're in a Christian church and you really don't enjoy being there, agree with the philosophy anymore, then who are the people that live in ways that, if emulated, would make you feel more safe and secure? Who are the people you enjoy being with because you feel more connected, more whole, and it's more natural for you to share with them and enjoy reciprocity? That would be tribal association. Wanting to belong, that relates to who are my people, and wanting to belong to a family. Anybody that's been orphaned and doesn't know either who their father and or mother is always has this deep sense of wanting to belong, because we all want to know where our roots are, who do we come from. But if that's the case and you don't know who they are, then know that the world is your family and that you can become your own mother and your own father. And we often choose more challenging childhoods as we grow spiritually, just like when we get stronger and stronger in a gym, we lift heavier and heavier weights. So to grow ourselves to become a Buddha or a leader or a teacher or a great lover or a wise person, we have to go through spirit gym and build some muscles. And without the polarities that create consciousness, we can't legitimately grow. So these are all very valuable things. Now, safety and security today has a lot to do with finances. We don't go hunting and fishing. We go to the supermarket or to the farmer's market or to the fish market. So one of the biggest things I see in all my patients throughout my entire career is that a lot of health challenges come from financial mismanagement or making excuses about what you can't get and then being sad sack because you don't have enough money and all that stuff. I've heard a billion times in my life from all sorts of people, including clients and students and everybody else. So what are the issues that right now you're aware of that make you feel unsafe in relationship to yourself, in relationship to family or tribe? What places do you have insecurities about? Like maybe if you don't feel secure at work for some reason, or you don't feel safe walking home at night, so there would be a place activity. And things. So if you have problems with addiction, for example, maybe you have a coffee addiction or a food addiction or a sex addiction. So we will identify those as things. So wherever you're challenged with safety and security with regard to family, tribe, or you're having a challenge fitting in, and that leaves you feeling insecure, that's the challenge that's down here. And oftentimes these elements of ourselves that we're acting out are unconscious, and we can even carry these things in from past lives if you believe in that model. I just have too much experience not to believe it. Long story there. But so what we often have to do is go into meditation. Now, as it relates to the shadow is what happens when you get enculturated. So anytime that we're taught what you're allowed to do or not allowed to do, so you fit into the church group or into society, or what music you can and can't listen to, what clothes you can and can't wear, what makeup you can and can't wear, pretty much everything where there's a social limitation produces a shadow. So if you like to dance naked in the rain, well, you're probably going to need to suppress that, because if you do, in a lot of places, you'll get arrested for indecent exposure. So there you see our spontaneous urge to dance and to be creative and expressive gets repressed down into our unconscious so that we can fit into a society. So unfortunately, a lot of our novel ideas get repressed because we are convinced by parents and society as children that we should not do those things. But yet look at all the people dancing pretty much nude on stage, from Madonna to Lady Gaga to you name it, who are making millions and millions of dollars because they overcome the shadow and they overcome their fear of the consensus and stand on their own 2 feet as an individual and express themselves. And part of that is dealing with the backlash, which the smarter people out there make profitable. So there is a way out of all that. Sometimes you just need to dance naked in the rain in your backyard. So there's a very simple solution. But most people just I can't do it. People are going to see me or whatever. Go on your roof, do something. But if that's something that you need to express, now that's only an example of a myriad of things that you are potentially repressing. When you break out of the cultural norm, you now go on the hero's journey. And so if you listen to my podcast with Kyle Kingsbury, you'll see a very good expose of the hero's journey and how many molds he had to break through and break out of. And if you listen to my podcast with Aubrey Marcus and Kyle Kingsbury on multiple partner relationships, you'll get a very solid understanding of shadow and social conformity and how much trouble and pain that causes. Okay? So now what I'd like you to do is think about, where am I challenged with regard to my safety, security, my family, my tribe? Who do I belong to or wish I belonged to? And how am I going to make that transition? So let's just start with something simple like money. On this diagram, which you can easily draw it by hand, too little. When I have too little money, it affects me from living my dream. So we can put dream up here. Why? I can't buy the food I want or need. I can't get the car I need to get to this new job possibility that I have that's 30 miles down the road. What are the challenges of too much money? Now, some of you are going to say, there's no such thing as a challenge with too much money, which you mean you're very naive. I've worked with countless millionaires and even billionaires, and trust me, they have plenty of problems. Money can attract lots of problems to you. In fact, 98% of lotto winners interviewed 1 year after they won the lotto were not only broke, but many of them wish they'd never won the lotto, because people came after them for money and they realized how shallow and superficial their people they thought loved them were, and caused all sorts of troubles in their life. And they ended up spending so much money that when they didn't have any money left, they had now a catastrophe on their hands because they couldn't pay for and maintain everything. So what happens if I have too much money? And remember, money is a form of power. It requires management. Okay? So a simple analogy for that is, think of money like water flowing through a hose. You know, if you have enough water pressure and you turn your garden hose on full blast, it'll start flying around in your yard. Well, we'll call that $50,000 a year. Now, if you give somebody who can't handle and isn't mature enough to hold on to a garden hose, a fire hose, we'll call that $3 million a year. They're going to now be blasting around with a fire hose in their hand, which will knock the windows right out of your house, destroy your garden, and drown your dog, so to speak. So we need to be mature and say, what happens if I have too much of any given thing? Now you might say, I feel insecure or I feel disconnected because my father doesn't pay enough attention to me. So what happens when my father doesn't pay enough, too little attention to me? What would happen if my father paid too much attention to me, or my mother, or anybody? And then what's the balance that I need to create? So too little money does this, too much money does that. How much is enough money to live in a way that feels good but isn't overly stressful, because I'm not tempted to do stupid things with too much money like drugs, and I have enough money to live well? How would my life be like with my father and my mother if I got enough connection from them to feel supported, but not so much that I felt smothered or controlled, versus not getting enough attention at all? So again, too little, what does that look like in my life? And you can use your imagination. Too much, be brave, use your imagination. And so now, what is it that I'm willing to do so I can live my life and accomplish my dreams most efficiently? So that basically shows you how to apply the model. And when you write these things down in the middle, those are the things you choose to do. And if you're communicating with others who you have resistance over when you make the changes, you don't say things like you woulda, you shoulda, you coulda, you didn't. You say, I'm wanting, I'm feeling, or I'm needing, because nobody can deny what you want, feel, or need inside yourself as an individual. Unless they're just, what's the right word? Unconscious, okay? And disrespectful. So there's your introduction to the model. Your homework is to explore the issues of the root chakra, meditate on them, put your consciousness where your body hurts, anywhere from the lower lumbar vertebra down to your toes and throughout your bones. The left side of the body relates to the feminine principle. So look at left-sided injuries. How well am I nurturing or not nurturing myself? And what's my relationship like with the women in my life, starting from your mother and working outward from the core of the family? Right side of the body is the masculine energy or expressive energy, and the sex relationship is to males, which starts with the father, so progress out from there. So someone with chronic right-sided injuries usually is either over-exercising or overworking, or has a problematic relationship with their father. And since their father is their model for males in the world, then their way of fathering themselves will mirror their father. The way they mother themselves will mirror their relationship with their mother. That will be unconscious until you become aware and choose how to do a better job and find the Zen path. Thanks for joining me today. In part 2, we will get into the theme of the second chakra. I will see you then.